Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather going out through the first part of April. In today's video, the first 10 days or so of the month. Still got some doubt about what's happening for April, to be honest. It's going to start off on a warm note, starting off warm today, and it's going to be staying quite mild through the next few days. Quite where we go as we go into the body of April, though, say from around the 10th onwards. Difficult to say. The ECMW have turned quite chilly this morning, but the GFS having none of it. So we'll have a look at it in a moment, see what's happening. And also going to talk about March. We've got the central temperature in for March, so we'll have a look at that in just a second. Before I get on with that, though, I just want to talk about the advertised video ads on my pages at GazWebVids.com. If you press play on the video ad, you'll be supporting GazWebVids.com. And thanks very much for doing that. So this is the Central England temperature chart from Hadley going back to 1659. We've got the Central England temperature in for March now, and the Central England temperature comes out at 7.6, which similar to what we saw in January and February. January 5.7, February 6.2 is an anomaly of around 2 degrees above average. So we're generally, for 2014 so far, running around 2 degrees above the long-term average. All 3 months coming out somewhere around a couple of degrees above average. Doesn't sound like much, but it's quite a big anomaly, that, and if it was to continue through the year, I think it would just about be the warmest year on the CET record. But of course, we're only 3 months in, so things could reduce a lot as we go through the next few months. Have to wait and see. Oh man, of course, 7.6 per March is in complete contrast with last year when we came out at just 2.7. So complete flip around this year compared to last year. Very cold March last year, and it's only the mildest March since 2012, because March 2012 comes out at 8.3, so that was an even warmer March than the one we've just experienced. So yeah, complete contrast to last year, and only the warmest since 2012, not beating 2012, nowhere near the record which was set in 1957, and generally, I say, running around 2 degrees above average. Now this line here, or this chart here, is essentially temperature as a graph going back to around the mid-1700s, so going back to around 1750 with this. That's about when the central temperature record becomes reliable. It does go back to 1659, but this chart doesn't go as far back as bad, and early on in the Central England temperature list, it's pretty unreliable, I think. So we go back to mid-1700s with this. What's important is this red line just here. This indicates the average stretched out over those hundreds of years, and we can see that with this red line in the Central England temperature, we have gradually increased through the 20th century. Here is 1900. Just here we see that the central temperature has been gradually ticking up, although some rises and falls, but generally ticking up. And then of course, as we get through towards around the mid-1970s, 1980s, we see the central temperature absolutely rocketing up, the red line really shooting up there. But in the last few years, we've been seeing a drop back in the central temperature. Quite a significant drop has occurred since 2007. The red line very much dipping down since 2007, indicating that we're seeing quite a significant plunge in the temperature overall over the last 5 or 6 years. But this green line here shows where we currently are for 2014. As I say, we're running as an anomaly around 2 degrees above average. And you can just see, I'm not sure if you can make it out, you can just see that it looks as though the drop, for now anyway, in the central temperature has been arrested, because that line, that red line, right at the very end here, is just starting to level out. So it looks as though for the time being the drop in the central temperature that's been occurring since 2007 is starting to stop. We're stopping the decline. Not ticking back up yet in terms of that line, but it'll be interesting to keep an eye on it as we go through this year and possibly next year as well, to see whether we start increasing the central temperature average once again, but certainly it appears that for the time being the drop that's been going on since 2007 has been arrested somewhat. So we find that interesting anyway. It's just goes to show how far back central temperature goes, and things have been quite significant in terms of the drop in the temperature that's happened since 2007, but we may be seeing an end to that for the time being. Well, let's look ahead to April, and well, it still concerns about what's going on in April. Still very confused sort of picture. This is the GFS temperature and rainfall ensemble. Deal with the temperatures first of all. You know about this by now, I'm sure. The red line here is where we should be in terms of your temperatures at this time of the year, and we really are well above average at the moment, several degrees above that red line, and we stay that way through the first week of April. So it is going to be quite a warm first week of April. This takes us to around the 8th of April just here. So the first week is going to continue, I think, probably with that anomaly of around 2 degrees above average. Now, as we get beyond that period, we start to get a huge amount of scatter appearing. The general idea, and you can see this typified by the white line, is that we're staying above average through certainly to say around the 13th, 14th, which is just here. But there is a huge amount of scatter there, and you couldn't really look at that from around the 8th, 9th of April onwards and really predict what's going to happen, because we've got lots of members dipping down, actually going a little bit below average, lots of members staying above the red line and staying quite warm. So there's so much scatter there, but you couldn't really pin that down as to what's going on. And this very confused picture has been something that's been going on for a long time. I did the video on Sunday talking about April confusion. It's still a confused picture. The long range models hinting at something colder for this month, the short range models not really having any of it, and still even into April itself now, April the 1st today of course, still it goes on. The rainfall spikes show that we have got some rainfall coming up later on in the first week. It's pretty dry at the moment, but I think as we get to around the 6th, 7th, 8th, then we do have a risk of some rainfall coming in, and that's just associated with this scatter starting to appear. So presumably as that rain comes in, there's a chance that we could start to bring in some colder temperatures. Now, whatever happens for the first week of the month, it's going to be warm. So this is the temperature anomaly for the 1st to the 9th of April, and yeah, we're looking at above average. We're in the red colours here across British Isles, most of Central and Western Europe above average as well. Pretty cold across Russia though. Winter still hangs on across many central and western parts of Russia, but for us, yeah, we're in those red colours. So again, it's the anomaly of around 2 degrees above average. This can't go on indefinitely, by the way. At some point we're going to have to start dropping these temperature anomalies back, because I said at the start of the video, 2 degrees above average doesn't sound like much, but there's an anomaly going on month after month after month. It's been going on since December. It's very significant, and presumably you will think that this can't go on much longer. So before long, we're going to start seeing the anomalies dropping back. If it occurs around summer, if this all starts to die away, these warm anomalies start to die away around summer, then we're not going to have a particularly warm summer. So it's just when the decline starts to happen, but it will happen. It can't go on for much longer, I don't think, before we can start turning in some cooler anomalies. Not necessarily saying it'll go below average, but certainly I think we've got to, before much longer, see these anomalies beginning to drop away. The precipitation anomaly for the next week showed that generally we're going to be a little bit above average, with rainfall in the north, in those pale blue colours, a little bit below average actually in the southeast of England. So that implies a bit of a north-south split setting up over the next week. Here's the generic charts. This is for GFS first of all. This is for next week, and it's still the same sort of idea as we've got at the moment, although the high pressure is more centred to the south and the southeast, actually across France and into Germany. Low pressure up to the northwest, but it's still pretty warm. You follow the ice bars back, they're going back in towards the tropical Atlantic, going back towards the Azores, so it'll still be quite mild, but it could be quite wet up in the north of the country along this black line just here, which is really the jet stream, there could be a weather front sort of strung out. So for the northern parts of the country, particularly Scotland and Northern Ireland, could actually be very wet at the start of next week. That explains that differential in the precipitation anomaly with the drier than average conditions in the southeast and the wetter than average conditions up in the northwest. As we go through to Tuesday the 8th of April, still the same idea, high pressure to the southeast, low pressure to the north, still pretty mild. As we move through to Wednesday the 9th, just signs that we're starting to push a trough down across the country, possibly set up some sort of mid-Atlantic ridge, so that could start to turn things a little bit cooler as we go through to Thursday the 10th. The high pressure then is relocating to the northwest of Scotland, possibly bringing down some cooler air. The real cold shot though going into Scandinavia, there's some cold northerly winds plunging down there, but we're not far away from it actually. So when I said at the start of the beginning, at the start of the beginning of the video, that the GFS is having none of the idea that it's going to turn cooler after the first week to 10 days. That's not quite right. Actually, we're very close to it becoming quite cold, but the real cold is over Scandinavia. And then the high pressure comes back in over the country by Friday the 11th, day 10. But that's probably quite a chilly high pressure, and there will probably be some night frost with that. The ECMWF for the start of next week, again in that mild southwesterly flow, probably more unsettled though. All areas perhaps at risk of outbreaks of rain early next week from this area of low pressure over Iceland. We push that weather system through on Tuesday the 8th, probably taking rain across the whole country, then we set up a cooler westerly wind. As we go through to Wednesday the 9th and on into Thursday the 10th, well, it's the same sort of idea for GFS, but more pronounced with this ridge of high pressure in the Atlantic going up towards Iceland and Greenland. Actually, a bit of a high pressure setting up around Iceland and Greenland, and we're very close, or even in that cold northerly wind setting up over Scandinavia. So as we go through to day 10, Friday the 11th, we are in a colder pattern then, high pressure centred over Iceland, bringing down much colder air. Could be some wintry showers in the north and the east of that, I think, and certainly there would be some quite significant night frost. How long that'll go on for, I'm not sure, because the Atlantic still looks very well set up for low pressure, so this high could collapse quite quickly, but certainly that is a colder snap at the end of next week being signalled by the ECMWF. For GEM, the Canadian, finally, and the high pressure is to the south and the east of the country to start next week in this southwesterly flow. As we move through next week, again we take weather system across the country early next week on Tuesday the 8th, that will take rain across all areas. And then for Wednesday the 9th, it's the same idea about deep troughs setting up around Scandinavia, bring cold northerly winds to them, high pressure ridging in the Atlantic going out to the west of the country. That cold shot plunges through Scandinavia, never really makes it into the British Isles, but that is a cooler sort of scenario, particularly for the north and the east. The high pressure is over the country, but I think the air mass is changing, so we'd lose the very warm conditions from the first week to 10 days of April, and we would at least turn it cooler with some night frost. And then the high pressure sort of sets up over the country on Friday the 11th, but it would be cooler, there would be the risk of night frost. So it's hard to say quite where things are going as we move through into, well, after the first week of April, really. I think we've got the first week pinned down, which is going to be quite warm, and probably turning increasingly unsettled as we get beyond, say, the 5th. We're going to bring some rain through. But where things go as we get to, from around the 8th to the 10th, into the second part of the month, really, the middle part of the month, difficult to say. On the face of it this morning, it looks as though it's going to turn cooler, and that's been the way that the longer range models have been trending. But of course, we've had a long run of very warm conditions. It could go on a bit longer. So I wouldn't want to pin in, and we've got the scattering the GFS ensemble as well, which is sort of holding me back from saying, yes, definitely we're going to see a change. So I wouldn't want to pin too many colours on the fact that there could be a change to cooler conditions. But that could be the way it's shaping up. So the first week to 10 days quite warm, and then possibly going cooler beyond that. That's it for now. Hope you found the video interesting. 5-day forecast tomorrow. Come back for that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.